Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 331. I'm the host, Kyle Anslone. I got a lot to talk about on today's show, including a new study that found Twitter was putting promoted tweets onto accounts that were involved in either sharing or attempting to promote in some way sexual abuse against children. So this is a really disturbing story that I've covered. I think have some unique perspective on to break down on today's show. Also have some of the usual foreign policy topics to discuss, like the war in Ukraine. So share today's show. You can find it at the Libertarian Institute, libertarianinstitute.org/Kyle for a full roundup of my work. I'm always writing news stories, the daily news roundup, and putting out at least 3 episodes of this show, Conflicts of Interest, every week at the Institute. So go ahead and just make sure that in some way you're checking out what's going on at the Institute. We now have a Substack there, and all the news stories that I write get put on Substack and then emailed out. So it's a great way to make sure that you're getting every news piece that comes out through the Libertarian Institute. And you can also support this show by doing your CBD shopping with our sponsor, Paloma Verde, PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Promo code PEACE. They have a lot of great products at Paloma Verde. And when you use that promo code, you're going to save 20% and the show's going to get a kickback. So it's a great way to help out yourself and to help out your favorite podcast. They have a lot of great products at Paloma Verde. But if anybody is, trying to get back into shape, one of the things that's really hard is what happens when you start to get really sore. And, it's hard to just get up and do your job every day just because all of your muscles are so tight. And the sports cream at Paloma Verde is absolutely essential for just helping yourself to feel good every day, relieving those muscle pains, that really tight soreness that you end up getting, knee pain that I now have quite a bit of as I'm getting a little bit older and trying to get a little bit more exercise into my daily routine. And so if you want some relief for that kind of stuff, check out the sports cream at Paloma Verde. Again, just use that promo code PEACE, PEACE, when you check out, and you're going to get yourself a discount and you're going to get the show kickback. All right, now let's get into today's show. And as I mentioned in the intro, the first article I have today is titled "Corporations Pull Twitter Ads After Promoted Tweets Appeared Near Child Porn Request." An investigation conducted by the cybersecurity group Ghost Data found advertisements from well-known companies appeared on Twitter accounts that promoted child pornography. Several corporations have removed their ads from the social networking site. In response, Ghost Data identified hundreds of accounts sharing underage pornographic content, which Twitter did not remove. Disney, NBC Universal, Coca-Cola, and Scottish Rite Children's Hospital were among the 30 companies whose ads appeared on the criminal accounts, Reuters reported after reviewing Ghost Data's analytics. And so, just to get into a little bit more of it here, this isn't like a complete review of Twitter's placement of promoted tweets and on what accounts, etc. This was I think, very narrow scope where, essentially Ghost Data just identified about 500 accounts and saw what appeared on those accounts and, that horrific, however, the people that have to go through and to actually, measure, like, is there child pornography on this account and now what advertisements are appearing on this account. But, they went through. And I think this is a very limited, this is a pin drop in Twitter that what this particular study looked at. So several companies, including Dyson, Mazda, Ecolab, and Cole Haan, responded by suspending their Twitter advertisements. We're horrified, David Maddox, brand president at Cole Haan, told Reuters. He continued, either Twitter is going to fix this or we will fix it by any means we can, which includes not buying Twitter ads. One of the shoemakers' promoted tweets appeared next to a tweet soliciting underage content. The ads from major corporations appearing next to illegal content may be a result of Twitter's failure to remove much of the child pornography posted on the site. Ghost Data identified over 500 accounts that openly shared or requested child sexual abuse material over a 20-day period this month. Twitter failed to remove more than 70% of the accounts during the study period, Reuters reported. And so think about that. They're saying that they identified over 500 accounts that were openly sharing. So it wasn't like, people were asking for like code word names, like, things that you would like have to, and then like everything was really going on outside of Twitter. This is like, they're saying openly sharing or requesting. They gave, examples here of people saying that they want to swap child pornography. Obviously, they didn't post or share any of that particularly content, thankfully, but they were shared some of the keywords that were found on these sites, like rape and teens, and I mean, it's just horrific. It's really terrible to even talk about like this. But, I do think this is an important story to get out there. And one of the reasons I really chose to write and highlight this and talk about it on the show is because, this is being reported through Reuters. Dyson is taking their, almost everybody has a Dyson product in their house, right? A lot of people drive a Mazda or know somebody that drives a Mazda. Everybody watches Disney. Everybody watches NBC Universal, movies and things like that. And if all these people are being affected, and if Reuters is reporting it, and companies are taking their ads off of Twitter, it's because there's a real problem here. And so while I think that at times this has morphed into like a right-wing fringe kind of thing, I'm sure like parts of that has roots in Pizzagate and everything like that. This is a real problem that, somebody needs to address and talk about. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons that I think this is so important. So, of course, Twitter responds by saying that it has zero tolerance for child sexual exploitation and is investing more resources dedicated to child safety. The company sent an email to several of its advertisers on Wednesday saying it found ads on accounts linked to child sex abuse. The email was shared with Insider. And so this to me suggests that Twitter actually isn't taking this as seriously as they think, rather than making a public statement or even talking about this ghost data study that was reported by Reuters. They tried to, I think, really circumvent this. They must have gotten wind that, hey, this, is coming out. And so they send an email to their advertiser saying that, hey, we detected some of your material on these accounts and we're doing everything we can to fix it, rather than saying, actually, we got busted here. And, now we're saying we're taking action. So they look like they're trying to make this look like it's preemptive, but it's in no way preemptive. It's all reactive. According to the outlet, Twitter told some of its advertisers it had suspended all ads on profiles that shared the illicit material. The company said it had also updated its systems in order to better detect accounts linked with child sex abuse material and prevent ads from being served next to this account. So I guess multiple things here that are shocking about this part of the statement is, one, there should be no accounts that share illicit underage material on Twitter, full stop, right? It's not that there shouldn't be ads on those accounts. Those accounts just should not exist whatsoever. And then this idea that the company needs to update its systems to better detect child sexual abuse material. Look, for all of us in the libertarian community, at least, and my guess is most of my audience that's from the left wing here has also experienced quite a bit of this. They know that if anybody said remotely anything involving the bad scene over the past couple of years and what they, if they want to question the effectiveness of the bad scene, or maybe question the integrity of the most recent election in the United States, those things get pulled off of Twitter, and the account gets pulled all the time. I mean, this is constantly happening to people. And so how is it possible that Twitter can't detect accounts that are saying, I'm looking for content of teens being raped, to pull those off, but yet, some guy I know who says, well, it seems strange to me that, that box of ballots didn't end up at the counting center in time, ends up getting their Twitter account pulled and they can't get it back within a couple minutes. I mean, this is just absurd, and I think it really exposes Twitter here. So, let's see. I want to get back to this because yeah. So, however, the proliferation of child pornography on Twitter has been a well-known phenomenon for some times, and the company has a mixed record of protecting underage victims. In one infamous example, 2 children were blackmailed in producing sexual content that was posted on Twitter. According to a lawsuit filed by the survivors, even after they provided evidence of being underage, the company refused to remove the video. So this is what the plaintiff said, or this is what Twitter told the plaintiff in 2020. We've reviewed the content and we didn't find any violation of our policies, so no action will be taken at this time. Meanwhile, I mean, I guess I can't imagine that like Twitter or any of these social media companies could possibly have a policy where there's any kind of private content of children. I'm not even talking about sexual in any way, just like, if a kid is recorded in any kind of private environment, I would include like a school scenario, in a home environment. I guess it's different, like if they're speaking or maybe playing in a sports game or something like that. But essentially, like if a child is in any kind of private environment and those children request to have their content taken off of any social media, it's baffling to me that the policy of Twitter isn't to take that down. That would require a review of their policies. But in this case, it's absolutely 100% certain that they apparently looked at this video of underage child pornography and elected to leave it up on the site. And I was actually talking with, and we'll get into in a minute, human trafficking survivor advocate Liza Blue, and what she, told me is that this account was far bigger than hers or mine or anything like that was sharing this kind of material. So, this is a comment from the case from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The facts in this case are especially egregious because the electronic surveillance service provider was aware of the child victim's graphic sexual images and refused to remove the videos from the platform. Last month, The Verge, which is an outlet, I don't know if people are familiar with it, they do a lot of like more tech-based stuff. I put them like in kind of category with Tech Dirt or something like that. The Verge reported that Twitter rejected a proposal to monetize adult content on the site because of its inability to identify and remove underage content. Twitter cannot accurately detect child sexual exploitation and non-consensual nudity at scale, an internal Twitter report found. And so, I mean, the non-consensual stuff, maybe there is like some more difficulty to that because there are a lot of sex workers who do utilize Twitter, and I'm not opposed to consenting adults, doing what they want with their bodies on whatever platform they want. But certainly the exploitation of children is quite disturbing in that, Twitter is not monetizing something that could generate billions of dollars in revenue because the underage sexual content is so prolific on their site is really disturbing. And so then I was fortunate enough to be able to talk to Liza Blue about this. She was extremely helpful to me in helping me understand like how deep this problem is, and that it's not just this one little 500 account sample that we're talking about here, but a much larger problem. And then also, she's just a great advocate who's been able to really, I think, bring more awareness to the issue of human trafficking and things like that. And, how Twitter in particular is institutional into allowing this to happen for people to make money on this. So this was Liza's statement. Twitter has knowingly refused to remove child sexual abuse material at scale for a very long time. Unfortunately, it's gone unchecked for so long after Twitter's going after Twitter's advertisers is a Hail Mary before governments and those seeking power step in. Not only is the child exploitation material devastating to the survivors of this crime, but this is a very real crime. It is also the perfect excuse for governments to step in, ultimately violating digital privacy rights. If governments step in and have access to private messages, this will be harmful to political dissidents, activists, journalists, survivors, and innocent civilians globally. I never blamed Twitter for the initial sexual abuse. I blame them for refusing to remove remove child sexual exploitation material at scale. Twitter has many priorities over the last few years. They prioritize the censorship of words over the removal of human rights violations committed against children. Perhaps when most of the advertisers pull away from Twitter, they will finally get the message. My only hope is now that the survivors will that Twitter will still have some money left to compensate the brave 2 minor survivors suing the platform. And I think Liza said that their trial is coming up here, so I'm not sure, I guess, how much information is really going to be made public, because obviously, we're talking about minor victims here, but I will try to get an update from her once that moves forward, and either I'll write another article or maybe I'll talk to her about coming on the show or something like that. But I think Liza makes a lot of the points there that I maybe elaborated on earlier in the article, but I think one of the things that she really highlights is how, this step is actually the libertarian solution here. When something this disgusting is happening at scale, then money has to be pulled away for Twitter, because if nothing happens, then we're just allowing these innocent victims to be like traumatized again and again by this content. All right, my next article today, moving on, a little bit more lighthearted, I hope, at least. Sounds like a little bit of good news. Russia announces citizenship for whistleblower Edward Snowden. I write for the Libertarian Institute on September 26th. Heroic whistleblower Edward Snowden was granted Russian citizenship on Monday. Snowden leaked a massive cache of classified documents from the National Security Agency, proving the U.S. government conducted widespread surveillance on its own citizens. In 2013, Snowden turned over the NSA documents to Glenn Greenwald and several other journalists, meeting them in Hong Kong after fleeing the United States. Upon leaving the city, however, the Barack Obama White House pulled Snowden's visa, meaning when he landed in Moscow to change flights, he was unable to continue onto his planned destination in Latin America. For almost a decade, Snowden has been stranded in Russia, effectively in exile. In October 2020, Moscow granted Snowden permanent residency status. He applied for citizenship 1 month later. The request for Russian citizenship was granted on Monday. In a tweet, Snowden explained citizenship would offer his family more stability. After years of separation from our parents, my wife and I have no desire to be separated from our sons. He said, after 2 years of waiting and nearly 10 years of exile, a little stability will make a difference for my family. I pray for privacy for them and for all of us. And so Snowden seems to think that this is a good thing for him and his family. He's a hero as far as I'm concerned, and good for him that, he's then gotten this citizenship. Initially, the State Department said it was unaware to any changes to Snowden's citizenship, so I will try to keep an eye on that and see if the government's going to try to do anything about this. The U.S. government has brought charges against Snowden for leaking classified materials, which include thousands of pages of documents exposing the NSA's sweeping mass surveillance program. There is currently no formal extradition treaty between Washington and Moscow, and while Russian officials previously indicated they had no plans to hand over the American whistleblower, they seem less likely to do so now given Snowden's newly granted citizenship. All right, let's move on and go over some of the latest updates for the war in Ukraine. First up, from Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com, a new $1.1 billion arms package for Ukraine includes 18 HIMARS launchers, our HIMARS launchers. The Pentagon announced a new $1.1 billion arms package for Ukraine on Wednesday that includes 18 high-mobility artillery rocket system HIMARS. So far, the U.S. has delivered 16 HIMARS, which are made by Lockheed Martin. The arms package is being given to Ukraine through the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, USAI, which allows the Biden administration to purchase arms for Kiev. A U.S. official said the weapons will take a few years to be delivered, as Washington plans to arm Ukraine for the long haul. According to the Pentagon, the full arms package includes the 18 HIMARS, 150 armored high-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles, 150 tactical vehicles to tow weapons, 40 trucks and 80 trailers to transport heavy equipment, 2 radars for unarmed aerial systems, 20 multi-mission radars, counter unmanned aerial systems, tactical secure communication systems, surveillance equipment and optics, explosive ordnance disposal equipment, body armor, and other field equipment, funding for training, maintenance, and sustainment. The HIMARS that the U.S. has been sending to Ukraine are equipped with missiles that have a range of 50 miles. But that can change. Kiev is requesting Army tactical missile systems, which have a range of nearly 200 miles, but Washington has been hesitant to send longer range missiles. Russia has warned that providing such arms would cross a red line. Also on Wednesday, William LaPlante, the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisitions, met with representatives from 45 nations in Brussels to discuss boosting industrial capacity to make more weapons for Ukraine. According to the Pentagon, LaPlante shared plans to increase production of ground-based long-range fires, air defense systems, air-to-ground munitions, and other capabilities. The Pentagon said that nearly 20 other nations also detailed plans to strengthen and expand their nation's industrial base to accelerate production as a part of the effort. Okay, so, as the U.S. continues to send just absurd amounts of weapons to Ukraine, there really doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot of debate on any of this. I did read that Republicans may vote against the continuing resolution in Congress, although I'm not sure that that's really out of concern for the situation in Ukraine and the weapons being provided, but rather it is just for the domestic issues, because this is lumped in with a lot of other spending. In addition to the $1.1 billion in military assistance, the U.S. announces $457.5 million in civilian security aid for Ukraine. So this is going to be money that they're saying is going to police agencies versus going to the army. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to parse, which is which in a time of war and everything like that, but interesting news that we're getting there. Now, a couple of stories from my roundup on Russia that I want to touch on before we get into the Nord Stream question. And the first is that the Pentagon will start delivering the NASAMS anti-aircraft systems to Ukraine within 2 months. They've been talking about delivering these to Ukraine pretty much all summer, so the fact that they're finally being delivered I thought was interesting. Turkish banks have agreed to abandon the Russian Mir payment system after being threatened with U.S. sanctions. And let's get back to Dave DeCamp's articles here. The next one, Dave DeCamp writes, explosion caused major damage to both Nord Stream pipelines. European officials on Tuesday said massive leaks in the Nord Stream natural gas pipeline that were caused by explosions were likely the result of sabotage, raising questions on who the culprit might be. The Nord Stream pipelines connect Russia to Germany via the Baltic Sea. Russia recently stopped shipping gas through Nord Stream 1 indefinitely, and the construction of Nord Stream 2 has been completed, but the pipeline has never been fully operational, as Berlin suspended the project after Russia invaded Ukraine. Two leaks were detected in the Nord Stream 1, and one leak was detected in Nord Stream 2 after the operator reported a sudden drop in pressure overnight Monday. While neither pipeline has been delivering to Europe, both contain gas under pressure. And from my understanding, it's pretty important not only that pipelines maintain gas under pressure, but I think even that they actually transport the gas too, but in this case they did at least have gas under pressure. 2 underwater explosions were recorded earlier on Monday near the Danish island of Bornholm in the Baltic Sea, which is where the leaks occurred. Nord Stream AG, the operator of the pipeline, said it was not possible to estimate when the damage could be fixed. The Swedish Norwegian and Danish officials all said the damage was likely caused by a deliberate attack. Over in Moscow, the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that sabotage cannot be ruled out. Richard Sikorski, a former Polish foreign minister and current member of the European Parliament, suggested on Twitter that Washington was behind the attack. He posted a picture of the disturbance in the water and said, "Thank you, USA." In another tweet, Sikorski, who is also married to an American journalist, Ann Applebaum, described his view that the U.S. was responsible as his hypothesis. He also celebrated the attack, saying that $20 billion of scrap metal lies at the bottom of the sea. So there's a lot of questions here, and I know at the start of the war, the President Joe Biden had said that, look, and suggested that this pipeline wouldn't be allowed to operate as long as the war was going on. And so it does sound a little bit like the U.S. made some threats here. However, I'm not so sure that this is really what's going on here. And my instinct is that the Americans were not behind this. I could be 100% wrong, but it seems really unlikely to me that at least the White House would have authorized what is essentially a terrorist act. I mean, this is a attack on a civilian energy target at a time when a lot of Americans, and particularly a lot of Europeans, are upset with how high gas prices are. It doesn't really make sense to me that the Americans would have done this. I would say this would be one of the more baffling foreign policy decisions maybe ever made by the White House if it really turns out the U.S. was behind this. Additionally, because of the climate portion of this disaster, that's also significant here. My guess is that the White House would have far preferred to wield its financial weapons rather than actually resort to this kind of act of sabotage. But, I'm willing to be wrong here. I am kind of saying that, look, I think Joe Biden is capable of preventing the national security apparatus from doing something this absurd, but I do still think that's the case. Again, I'm willing to admit I'm wrong on that, and I would not be extremely surprised, I guess, if that was the case. Next article from Dave DeCamp: sanctions on Russia open markets for U.S. weapons makers, said a White House official. So this is, of course, I think what it's all about here. The war in Ukraine is largely just about weapons sales and people making billions and billions and billions of dollars. So Dave writes, sanctions that will make it harder for Russia to export military equipment create an opportunity, that's a quote, for the U.S. weapons makers to find new markets, a White House official said at an arms industry conference on Tuesday. As a practical matter, countries that have to rely on Russian equipment are going to find it very difficult to even get basic supplies from Russia's defense industrial base. Kara Abercrombie, the National Security Council's Director of Defense Policy and Arms Control, told the conference. It's an opportunity certainly for the industry members in the room. It's an opportunity for the United States to provide the support that these countries need. And so for a long time, one of the things that the U.S. and mainly the military industrial complex has really wanted from the states that have been admitted to NATO after the fall of the Soviet Union was for all of them to do what they say is modernize their militaries and essentially phase out all the old Russian-made products and buy all new NATO products. Of course, this is going to cost a huge amount of money, but that's, obviously why the military-industrial complex wants it. So, it seems that they're finally going to be getting this, and they are very happy about it. Next article I wrote with Connor Freeman yesterday for the Libertarian Institute. White House increasing surveillance flights of Russian exclave as nuclear tensions heighten. And I mistakenly called Kaliningrad an enclave. It's actually an exclave. So I'll read it right here. But if anybody checks out the article, it should be updated now to with the correct phrasing and everything, but it was mistaken when it initially first came out. So the United States has carried out multiple surveillance flights around Kaliningrad, a Russian exclave, this week. The missions by American spy planes are likely assessing Moscow's nuclear weapons activity in the region. During the past week, 3 Boeing RC-135s have circled Kaliningrad, the Russian exclave on the Baltic Sea, sandwiched between North Atlantic Treaty Organization members Lithuania and Poland. In recent months, the unconnected Russian territory has become increasingly important. Earlier this year, NATO announced it would welcome Finland and Sweden into the alliance. Moscow warned it could increase its military presence in the region as a response to any potential NATO strategic weapons deployments within the prospective new territories. Additionally, Russia and Lithuania's relationship degraded after Lithuania blocked Moscow from transporting goods from the homeland to its exclave. After receiving threats from the Kremlin and pressure from the European Union, Lithuania has relaxed most of these restrictions. The surveillance flights come as Western leaders are increasingly concerned that Russian President Vladimir Putin could order a nuclear strike. Politico recently reported Western intelligence agencies are stepping up efforts to detect any Russian military moves or communications that might signal Russia has ordered the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So, last story here on the Ukraine situation itself. Russia says military operations to continue at least until Donetsk is liberated, and Donetsk is the southern portion of the Donbass region, which of course we've been talking about on this show for quite some time. So Dave DeCamp writes at antiwar.com, Russia has said that special military operation in Ukraine will continue at least until it captures all of the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine. Donetsk is the home to the self-declared Donetsk People's Republic, which first established in 2014 following the U.S.-backed coup in Kiev. The DPR and other Russian-controlled areas in Ukraine are expected to be absorbed by Moscow after referendums concluded on Tuesday. They said, I think the southern regions were like 89 and 93%. The Donetsk and Luhansk were like 95 and 99% or something of people voting to join and be annexed by Russia. My same feeling as before about on these referendums. I just want to make it clear, I'm not endorsing this thing. My guess is that if you ask the people who are currently in these regions if they'd rather be a part of Russia or Ukraine, they would all say Russia. I think there's probably a lot of reasons for that, and it's not just because they're afraid of the Russian security forces, but, this territory has been controlled by Russia for 7 months of warfare now, and if territory is controlled by Russia, it's probably being shelled by Ukraine, and so these people may have come under attack from Ukrainian forces. Of course, as we documented, a lot of the Ukrainian forces, especially a lot of the frontline fighters in the Donbass region, were members of the Azov Battalion or other far-right neo-Nazi leaning groups who are Ukrainian ethnic supremacists, and of course the majority of ethnic Russians in that region are not going to be receptive to those people. So again, not a surprise to me if the people that are there now are going to vote this way. That being said, I really don't think you could in any way call that any kind of legitimate election. I think this is essentially Russia's military strategy cloaked in just a thin veil of democracy. So, that's the situation there. It looks like this war is going to continue at least for a little bit of time coming up here. It doesn't seem like the West is at all interested in diplomacy in any way. Any kind of progress being made is done maybe by like Turkey, the UN, the Vatican, but Mexico, Saudi Arabia, but largely no one is. It seems very interested in diplomacy here. So even once Russia takes the Donetsk, I think this thing still has some legs to go on, just because nobody's going to agree to end it. All right, everybody, that's where I'm wrapping up the show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Check out Conflicts of Interest. It's on antiwar.com, the Libertarian Institute, YouTube, Rumble, Odysee. Follow me on Twitter at KyleAnslow_. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today.